Okay, the trio is back. Scotty, welcome back to the potty.
Thanks, bro. Thanks, boys. Thanks for having me back. It feels honestly like it has been. I don't even know how long it's been. I think it's been like what, 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
we had you on just before ICN Nationals. So a lot has happened since then.
Yeah. So yeah, it would be 6 weeks and change. It's funny. I've had people reach out and say, "Oh, are you not doing the podcast anymore? Like, have you had a falling out?"
I guess it's
Uh,
been like obviously you'll explain everything that you've been up to because everyone wants an update and we want to get an update off you. But obviously, the first couple of weeks you were still traveling, you were competing, then you were getting
hmm
settled in, and then you had to work out what your schedule was. And obviously, there's 11 to 12 hours difference between us. So it could either only be your morning or our night or vice versa. So by the time we sorted everything out, and also we had to have meetings with you, like we had to have meetings about the retreat, about other things we had on for next year. So we had to really utilize the small little window of time that we could get from you to
hmm
as useful as possible. But now we're in a really, really good rhythm where you should be back on every single week. So,
Yep. If you guys will have me.
of course, I think you said to me once, like, only if you guys really want me back on. Like, what are you even talking about? This is not a podcast without you. Like, of course we want you back on.
Yeah, it started to go downhill real fast, man.
Yeah,
Real fast.
Nah, I've tuned into I think all of them bar one. I didn't catch last week's one. I haven't caught up on that one yet, but I definitely there was a bit of FOMO, and even just from an interaction perspective, because I feel like a lot of people think that I'm over here having a holiday, but in reality, my life back in Australia is so much cruisier in terms of the days that I have. So it's just nice to have. I have lots of human interaction, like with all of the athletes that I work with over here, but equally to just hang out with my mates as well and to just chat because otherwise you kind of I have a little bit of dialogue each night when I get to see Jen, and then otherwise it's like rinse and repeat. So it's nice to just see some friendly, familiar Australian faces.
I think every time we jump on a Zoom or have a quick call, because we're trying to quickly catch up on certain things, we always
Mhm.
have that moment where we look at each other, we're like, I miss you, bro. Like,
Yeah, bad.
I
And
miss you,
and
man.
literally every sign off, like even if I'm speaking to you guys on the phone, it's the same thing. It's like, man, I really miss you. Like I just want to give you a hug through the screen.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. That's all right. We can
Yeah,
down and
but to be fair though, man, 6 weeks has gone pretty quick. Like,
yeah, definitely,
Absolutely.
definitely has. I quickly want to touch on this point before we get Scotty to talk through for the majority of the podcast because we're going to get an update from Scotty and then some of the questions that we have got, I've allocated the most nerdiest ones that would need a scientific explanation. So Scotty can take all those on board. But I quickly
awesome.
want to mention, and it's only that it came up today, is all of us boys got tagged in all these Spotify top picks, top podcasts on people's list. And I just want to say how grateful I was blown away. I was like, what is going on here? My phone is blowing up
hmm
and we're all getting tagged. And I was like, this is amazing that we have that support and we're on the top of people's lists. So we really, really appreciate it. And I actually got an anonymous, it was in the Q&A anonymous box, but someone left this. I don't know who it was, but they said, not a question. Just wanted to let you know that you're all integral part of what motivates me to become a great coach. Keep inspiring people. You guys are fucking legends. I just want to say that we are so grateful that we have your support and getting those kind of things motivates us to keep going. So we really, really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, man. And
Yeah,
like,
100%.
I saw some of the lists, man, and it's fucking mind blowing. Like some of the names that were, on that list, like you got the prep coach. We were, people would give their time to listen to us before, names like Gary V and like, some elite human beings. So absolutely beyond grateful. I had the best day ever today, man, because of that and everyone that shared. So, and I think I messaged everyone back that did share. And if I didn't, thank you all so much. Today was a really special day for all of us. Just getting those tags was amazing. And for those listeners that know also about the clothing brand that I have, which is Peak Precision Apparel, just to say thank you to everyone. If anyone wants to pick up some activewear, if you go on the website and type in code PrepCoach, you'll just get a $15 store credit to be used by Sunday night. So if anyone hasn't had a look or has had a look, you jump on Peak Precision Apparel and make an order, type in PrepCoach, and you'll just get $15 just for being a listener and being awesome.
Oh, that's awesome, MG. Thanks for that.
Awesome, man.
I love that. All right, Scotty, tell us what's going on. I don't know whether you just want to start from like in order of like what happened after nationals and you went to Bali and then you want to continue on from there, and you can tell us exactly what you're doing up till now and what you're working on and where you're traveling to and from work and things like that.
Yeah, and give us some real good detail about the job thing, man, because that's freaking. MT and I touched on it, but I think hearing it from you, giving everyone an idea is like what the day-to-day really looks like is going to be like really, really exciting. So
yeah, cool. So I guess I was kind of thinking as well this morning after I did a few check-ins. I was like, I don't know whether I should almost like make some notes on like how, because it just seems like there's quite a lot, and equally I don't want to train everyone with too much elements of minutia and whatnot. But I guess if we just start, I think leading into nationals, we obviously had the nationals in Melbourne, and I obviously had some athletes competing. And a big shout out to Ethan and Ev, who both got their ICM Pro cards. I wasn't unfortunately there to see Ev because I was on the plane, but she got hers on the Sunday. You boys were there for that. But Ethan, I was there to watch him get his pro card, something he's worked so hard for over the last few years, and we've really been working behind the scenes. So things like that, to be honest, that was probably more the highlight for me as opposed to even just competing as well. It's always challenging when you're competing and you've got athletes competing as well. So big congrats to both of those guys. In terms of the show, the nationals, probably didn't go as well as I would have liked. I was probably, most people would know, and apologies to those, there was a lot of people who came and said hi or whatever, and I probably seemed not sure, but just a bit disappointed because obviously I thought I was going to be in the mix to be able, and I thought I had a physique that was, I guess, going to be in that sort of top sort of mark, and I fell a bit short. I still obviously placed, but I didn't get the final placing that I wanted, obviously, but that's bodybuilding. It's a subjective sport. It was a really good lineup, and equally there was some phenomenal athletes up there. So we had that, and then I literally went home, showered, and had to get on a plane the next morning to fly out to Bali on the way over to the UK. And so we spent 3 days in Bali, and then from there, and that was kind of just to break up the flight because we've got 2 little ones, and it is a long flight from Melbourne to London. And so we had a couple of days there, which was just amazing to just get some sun. And literally on the 3rd day, Jen and I were both like, I really don't want to leave. And we were actually debating whether I was even actually going to go to Italy to do that show first and just take some time. But equally, part of the reason we had to get over there quickly was well because I'd already missed the first 4 weeks of lab work. So one of the reasons I was moving over was to finish the final year of my Masters of Science degree. And so I had to get over there for that. So we literally arrived, we got into Heathrow. And then because of the visa that I have that I'm over here with, I had 48 hours to get over to campus to submit, to say who I am, and to pick up my, it's like a card that you have. I've probably got somewhere in here. I've got it here. It's like a card you take it with you everywhere you go to say that I'm not a legal immigrant. I'm here to study, and obviously I have that as a result of Middlesex. So it was a rush to do that, super jet lagged, super dieted, and then obviously still having all my training to hit because I was about 8-9 days out from the Worlds in Perugia. So anyway, we got all that sorted and then jumped straight back in, and it was a pretty overwhelming experience first up. Virtually no sleep and then diving straight back into it, trying to play catch up. I remember my first day in the physiology lab and looking at all of these other really, really smart postgraduate people and just feeling like almost like a bit of imposter syndrome. And the first day was blood analysis, and I hadn't done that sort of, I knew all the theory behind it, but I hadn't done any of the practical application stuff. So it was a very, very full on day, but equally it was so rewarding. And I'll touch on more about some of the stuff that I'm going to be doing in the months ahead, but equally, like I thought I had a pretty good understanding of all things sport and exercise, nutrition, science, but equally like what I know now compared to then, and even some of the stuff in a applied setting that I now can do, and some of the machines that I can operate, it was really, really cool. So that was very overwhelming, but equally a good experience. So then as we move forward, we flew out to Rome on the Friday, Jen and I, with the show on the Sunday. And the show was actually, the Worlds was in Perugia. To be honest, it was probably the worst organized show I've ever been involved in. It wasn't like here, how you get your emails. There was no correspondence. You just got told to rock up. So we rocked up, and it's just every single athlete that rocked up. And so Spain is really, really big over in the bodybuilding scene within the Europe ICN competing space. And so Jen and I walked in, and all you could see was a sea of red in terms of, I reckon there would have been 150 Spanish athletes in this like small wine bar area where they were holding the show. And so I had no idea, no one speaking really any English. Everyone's talking about like speaking Spanish. I'd message Wayne to ask where he was. He eventually came down, but you had to get a ticket and then you would go in and register. So I got my ticket, and anyway, I ended up having to wait. I think it was about just under 5 hours. And so I'd luckily had some food with me, but it meant that I wasn't going to be able to train. So I registered, did all of that. And then this was Friday night. So then I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to be on the Sunday, but there was still no idea of what time we're going to be on. So as someone who likes to plan, be methodical, had no idea. Anyway, I kept waiting, thinking, oh, they're going to email out the running sheet because you list all of your information. And so we didn't get any of that. And then on Sunday, it had a guide of when you were going to be on. I think I was meant to be on it was going to be like 6 o'clock or something. So anyway, we had planned, I'm like, I just don't have a good feel that this is going to be run smoothly. So we're going to get there super early and you get your tan. So I got there and it turned out that my division had just been moved forward 2.5 hours and I had no idea. So if I had just rocked up three hours early, so I'm like, all right, lucky we came early. And so I'm like, that was when I had planned to be ready by. But because the show was delayed and I think there was 24 or something athletes, pro men's physique was the biggest lineup of the whole event. And so we didn't get on till I think 8 o'clock or something. Originally it was meant to be like 4 or something like that. So it was delayed. So the whole process, it was a bit frustrating, but regardless, it was easily the sharpest that I'd looked. And it was like, despite all of that, I had managed everything really, really well. I had a feeling that it was going to run late. So I didn't push fullness too hard. So we finally got up there. Again, never been in a lineup so big in my life, and a really different lineup. You boys have seen some of the photos. A lot of just really thick, some of the Spain guys, like really, really big guys, but equally not probably inside out peeled like we would, see over in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were pumping up backstage, I had a pretty good feeling. I knew that I was feeling really, really good. The look was good. I had that balance right. And I was pretty confident that I was, at least in the top 1 or 2 in terms of conditioning and equally that balance. But as everyone knows, I didn't really get a look in. I got compared with the top 5 and I got some good picks to be able to see how my physique stacked up against theirs. Wayne got some really good footage, who's the president of ICN for anyone who doesn't know. So I was pretty disappointed, to be honest, when I came off, because I honestly thought I was probably going to be in the top, at least in the top 2, top 3. And I thought I was in that mix, but this is the thing. Bodybuilding is a subjective sport. And so the judges didn't really deem that to be the case. And so I didn't place. And that was a bit tough as well, having not really experienced that before. And I guess the hardest part was feeling like it was probably the best look that I'd had. And then having some success earlier in the season with IFBB and the NBA Pro Show. And then to present what I thought was, by my own standards, pretty good. But equally, it wasn't. And that's where I think it was good for me. Like, I was disappointed, but equally, I wasn't like crying in my pillow, because I'm like, at the end of the day, I can't place the success of that show and the prep, for example, on 6 judges from other countries' opinion on whether I'm worthy or not worthy of being in that top echelon. Had it, been in another country, it might have been differently, who knows? But you just sort of have to know that, and this is what bodybuilding is about, getting better each show and appreciating the look and improving. And I was able to do that. So even though I didn't get success from a placing perspective, I was still pretty happy with, what I presented. So yeah, that was pretty much it in terms of the show itself. But I mean, you boys having a look at that, I mean, as you could tell, the competitor, it's just a really different look that they have.
Yeah, so on that, you probably heard our nationals kind of wrap up feedback about the judging and our thoughts. I guess hearing from you is, what was the judging panel like? Was there any Australian representative on there? Knowing that ICN comes from Australia, was there anyone over there to make sure that they are judging based on a look and a criteria that the home country want their athletes to look like in the specific divisions?
Jay, who is the ICN Indian president, so he was there, and everyone else was Spain, Italy, and I think France.
So we
didn't have any. Jay was a judge. Yeah,
he was a judge. Okay. So, but everyone else, there was European judges on the panel.
Yeah.
Okay. It'd be interesting to know if there was any education given to them, so that they know what ICN men's physique, bikini looks like, fitness looks like, bodybuilding looks like, so that when they're representing IC in different countries, the look is standardized.
Yeah, and this is the thing, and not to come across as sounding sour, but I probably wouldn't, not probably, I'll never do another overseas ICN Worlds or whatnot, because I think about I'm always going to be here. If I was going over there just for that show, I would have been pretty disappointed that that was sort of how it unfolded. But equally, I wouldn't really want another athlete of mine to perhaps experience that. I think if it's Bali, it's a bit different because you're going to have that, that crossover. But knowing the look that was there, and even it wasn't just my division, some of the other divisions watching in the crowd, I was like, I did not pick that. I would not have thought that. So I think my ability to gauge what they look for is very, very different. But again, this is the thing, it's a subjective sport. I guess the only really way to be able to attenuate that would be to have a clear set of criteria that, okay, if there was a meeting of judges, like a Zoom before they attended, this is our world champion. And I kind of went off the basis, if you look at Chad, who won in Prague last year. So fullness, super conditioned. He has a phenomenal physique. But the physiques that were rewarded this year were nothing like that at all. A lot more boxier, really big bubbly shoulders, but equally, not inside out, really shredded. So, and I think that was what was kind of hard to gauge. Like one of the guys that I think he placed second or third, I was pumping up backstage next to him, and I'd seen him in the amateur division earlier, and he looked really, really good in the morning, but he was way spilled. So he was just really watery. He'd washed out a lot of his detail, but equally he was in that top three. And I think looking back at those photos, and it's not like they were my photos that I had taken or Jen, they were the ones that Wayne was able to send through. It kind of gave me a bit of reassurance that maybe I wasn't just looking at my physique like you weren't actually on like you thought you were. I had that comparison with those top five, and I could see where I stood up. And I think and again, you have to respect, credit to all those guys who won, but equally, I think that I definitely put something forward to be able to be in the mix, but I wasn't. So it is what it is. But I'm seeing that I was like looking at my physique against theirs. Like I look back at that and I'm happy with what I put up against that. But again, it's subjective. I mean, you guys watched it. What did you think in terms of the lineup?
Yeah, from what you had showed me and from the photos I'd seen, again, I wasn't expecting them to reward that look, which was similar to what we found at Nationals. And the reason why I asked about what the judging panel was like is because I was at Korea, but Jay, who's an amazing judge, so Jay's ICN India president, he's also a judge in ICN Queensland, amazing judge. I actually love how he judges and the look that he was also head judging in ICN Korea. And that's when I was there and I had the girls there, right? And not only in the girls divisions, but all the other divisions, everything looked, I was like, yeah, that's what I expected. That's what I expected. That's what I expected. So that's why I asked you that question, because it'd be good if we knew that there was at least going to be a representative who they trusted as a really, really good judge to be the head judge everywhere around the world. So that at least we
I agree.
Organization. But if he was just on the panel and maybe didn't have the end say, the head judge say, then maybe that's the reason why, again, things were awarded not what we expected.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but equally, I mean, and Jay was awesome. I caught up with him. He's a real lovely bloke, and he's one credit to his athlete. I forget his name. He was from India. He was the guy who placed second, and he placed second, and that was his pro debut. So congrats to him and to Jay. But that's just the way it goes. Sometimes, like I said, you can't win them all, and equally, it is a subjective sport. You just have to. Sometimes it goes your way, other times, it doesn't. But so it was a little bit of a flat ending after such a really, really good start to the season. But equally in terms of the look that I brought, and I mentioned to you guys, I actually tried to come in even a little bit sharper for this last one. I pulled off another kilo, and touched down into just under 81 kilos, which was being super, super sucked down. So yeah, but all in all, it was a good season. And again, I was having a look at my goals the other week in terms of some of the things that I wanted to get out. And one of them was I wanted to be able to hold my own in an IFBB lineup. And obviously I wanted to step into NBA and to earn my pro card. I had the Pro Australian title on my list as well, which wasn't quite able to tick that off, but to be able to, still be reasonably competitive in IFBB and to do okay in NBA as well. So I'm happy with how the season went.
Definitely. Anything on that, MG?
Yeah, well, without getting too much into what you guys have already covered, I think, if I was in your shoes, I would have been pretty curious as to what the feedback was. And I think you and I had this conversation, and I'm pretty sure someone on the panel potentially gave you some feedback about sharpness, which didn't really make any sense when, it was pretty clear based on the photos that sharpness was definitely not your issue because you were probably the sharpest. But I know you got some feedback about sharpness. So it just makes me wonder, what were you actually
Yeah,
looking
that was
and
that
did
was
you
the
just
that
give him a
was some of
response
the
because
feedback that
you
I
were,
got.
yeah, did you just give him feedback because he asked you and now you need to tell him something and you don't know what to say, so you just tell him he needed to be sharper when really it wasn't sharpness at all. So like that's probably the only thing that's a bit interesting in terms of judging and feedback is it's got to be genuine. You can't say to the sharpest guy, "Oh shit, you needed to be sharper." Well, I don't think that's that's the issue. So that's probably the only other
Mm.
thing that people don't know is like the feedback wasn't really relevant to the look.
So
Hmm.
then, Scotty, then what? What did you do after that? It was just you and Jen in Italy together, right?
In Italy, yep. So we were there in Perugia. We got out of Perugia pretty quick because there's not much to do in Perugia. It's pretty boring. You walk around and then that's it, done. So then we went back to Rome. Everyone's like, "Did you just eat out everywhere?" To be honest, I didn't, and I haven't mentioned this to anyone, even to you guys. But for the first time in 5 years, I actually got celiac poisoned.
Oh,
So at the breakfast menu, and again, I didn't say anything to anyone, and it didn't affect. It definitely didn't affect the look because I was inside out. But at breakfast in Perugia, they have it's a brand called Shah. They have it all over the UK, and it's gluten free. It's and it lists what's on the packet. Anyway, at breakfast, I was eating my own meals. I was doing cream of rice, but they were equally giving us all of these bits and pieces, and so they had these rolls and these biscuits that were basically just carbohydrate. It was like 20 grams per serve. So I'm like, yep, I can use those because I've just been sick of just eating the rice cakes. They were low fat. So they handed us over those. They're all in the yellow packet. Anyway, dropped off a big bunch of them. So I looked through all of them. Yep, they're gluten free. They're gluten free. And then there were these other, it's like a cracker biscuit, and that was the only one out of all of them that didn't look. It's the same packet, and equally the gluten free version looks the same as the glutinous version. So I literally, Jen said, "Oh, try that one." And so I had maybe half a bite of it, not knowing that it was gluten. I was like, "Yeah, they're nice. Take them because I'll probably use them tomorrow for my carb up. They're really small volume, 10, 11 grams of carbs per one, whatever." Anyway, went for a walk afterwards just to digest a meal, and she was like, "Are you all right?" I said, "I just feel really weak and lethargic." And then I started to get like a really like overwhelming feeling like I'm going to be sick or I just need to lie down. Didn't know what was wrong. I went back to the room. I literally slept for 4 hours. And she's like, "You're right." I said, "No, something's wrong. I just don't feel right." And anyway, ended up being sick. And then I don't know what it could have been. I had my same like cream of rice. I had the same gluten free roll that was just carbohydrate. And then the other thing was that biscuit you gave. And so I'm like, the biscuit was sharp, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she looked at it and it was a normal packet of biscuits. So it was just like wheat. So that wasn't the gluten free version. So the lady had given everything gluten free, but these packet of biscuits, she'd grabbed the wrong one and given it to her. And it's the first time we literally checked every single packet, but they're all yellow. The first four are all, yep, gluten free. It says Shah. So your eyes just
no.
escape you. And I literally had half of it and I was absolutely like wiped out. And thankfully by about lunchtime the next day, I started to come good and feel good. I was probably 90% in terms of how I felt. But with me, whenever I have gluten poisoning, it just like it leaves me in a state of almost like feeling a bit depressed, a bit fatigued. And then you add that on to being in the depths of contest prep, it kind of wiped me out. So I just didn't have any appetite at all. We ended up going out for a pasta. I think my post meal, I had some pasta. And then the next day, I shared a pizza with Jenny. And that was about as extravagant as it got. So yeah, so there's a little inside story,
Oh, I didn't know
which
that.
again, yeah, and so ever since then, I've just been like meticulous about. I'm not letting anyone unless it's Jenny cook me anything, looking at all of it because it's the first time in 5 years that I've experienced that. So, but equally, that it definitely didn't affect how I looked, just being a little bit tighter. But so as a result of that, didn't go crazy and eat heaps of shit, and equally haven't really wanted to do that. I actually weighed in yesterday, and so my weight is still pretty light by my standards. So I'm hovering around about the 85 and a half despite pushing food up. But equally, because I've been so busy with work and running around, going back and forward, it's definitely increased expenditure. So, and equally just have no desire. Food focus is still not existent, but equally I'm still aware that I need to get some fat mass on because I'm definitely not at 100% cognitively and also just physically, just yet. So it wasn't crazy in terms of eating all this wild food like everyone was suggesting I was maybe going to do it, but I didn't really have any desire to do that. I think the longer you're in this space, you just don't really crave that. It was more just I want to be able to have cream of rice and just have a heap spoon of peanut butter in it, not have to have 12 grams.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's like true
So
athlete mindset, bro. That's what it is. Straight into it. Yeah.
yeah, and even what's been a month post that, and I'm still literally eating the exact same foods, just a bit more of them. And then if things like if the kids aren't going to finish their piece of toast rather than wasting it, then I'll eat that, or I might finish their dinner. But everything's going pretty smoothly. I probably just need to be a little bit more. We were talking about that last night. A little bit more assertive in terms of just another probably 2 kilos. I normally feel my best around about like 89, 90 when I'm coming out of that phase. So another 3 or 4 kilos, and then we'll get back into getting nice and juicy again.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say you weighed around about 87, 88. When you were about to say, I was like, oh, he's probably going to say about 88. Okay, so you are a bit short of it.
Yeah, but equally, and that's not because I'm trying to hang on to being shredded. Trust me, over here it's so cold. It's the last thing that I want to do. It's more just my days here are pretty long in terms of they start early because where I'm based in Felixstowe, it's about 2.5 hour commute in a car. On the train, it's about 3 hours. But equally, like Monday driving up, it took me 4 hours to get to work. So, and then when I'm there's lots of rushing around, lots of steps, lots of walking. And then I've been training a lot later in the evening. So I think that has kind of affected my net expenditure. So even though I'm trying to eat it a bit more, and even to be fully honest, there's been some days where I probably even missed a meal because I just haven't had a chance to eat when I needed to. And so I'm just like having a pot of yogurt or a protein shake just so I at least get a protein feeding, but I'm probably not getting the carbohydrate that I need. So that's probably playing a role as well. But now that I have sort of settled in a little bit, it'll be easier to now sort of put my bodybuilding hat back on and be a little bit more structured.
So obviously you're settled in. Do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown of like where you're actually staying in the UK, and then how many days a week you need to go to uni, then how many days a week you need to go to work, and also where are you training, that kind of stuff?
So I'm living with Jen and the kids. We're staying at Jen's parents in Felixstowe. So it's like a little coastal town. Picture like a small town in Ballarat, but sort of like by the seaside. But to get to the gym, for example, we train in Ipswich, which is kind of like the heart of this sort of area. It's about a 15 to 20 minute drive. And so we were training at a gym called Pure Gym. We're now training at David Lloyd's, and mainly because the kids have gym memberships too. So they do everything. They have squash courts, tennis courts, swimming pools, and they have like a kids membership. So the kids they have activities each day. It's called Kids Club. So they do soccer, could be like climbing, roller skating, disco, like all different things. So it gives the kids a bit of structure as well. They have a thing called Scooter Squad where they do all these different drills on scooters or running. They've got football tonight, soccer for us Aussies there. So they're having their first football class. I think Harvey's going to start trying tennis as well. So it just gives them something as well. And they've got this massive indoor play center. So the advantage is they might have a 2-hour class. They go and do that. And then Jenny and I will go and train while we're there just so that I can maximize the time that I have, because time is a little bit limited between work and all of that. So that's where we're training. It's called David Lloyd's. It's really, really big over here. A lot of the professional athletes train there because it is probably a different demographic. It's a bit more expensive, but it sort of has that swimming pool, sauna, recovery center, all that stuff as well. Yeah, that's exactly right. And then, so I'm at Middlesex on a Wednesday all day. So I was catching the train, which for someone who's never done public transport, it was definitely an eye-opener having to get on a train, get on the tube and be like sat next to people. Everyone knows I'm a bit of a germaphobe. I like to be in control of the environment, and there's some different cats on the underground. So that was an experience, but we've got a car now, so I tend to drive everywhere. So I'm at Middlesex all day Wednesday, but equally I applied for a ship with the Saracens, which anyone that follows rugby union would know them over here, but rugby and soccer or football are the two biggest sports here. And so I applied for that before I left. Again, there was a lot of candidates that applied. I think there was 50 odd or whatever. So I'm like, I'll see how I go if I get it, because you have to get part of my master's. I have to do a certain amount of placement in a professional sporting setting to be able to place to be able to be registered on the Sport and Exercise Nutrition Register as a sports scientist over here. And so applied for that. I had my interview on the second week of being there. I ended up getting it, which I was stoked with. And then within a week of that, I was offered the head of performance nutrition for the women's team. So that was it was a little bit of a shock, but equally it was such a cool experience. And full transparency, not really knowing much about rugby, it was something that was way outside my comfort zone. So I'm like, do you know what? This is something that I need to do to be able to improve my scope of practice. And it's been very, very full on, but equally such an amazing, like I look at the first few weeks versus where I am now in terms of trying to learn 45 different players' names, liaising with chefs, menus, the strength conditioning guys, the coach. It's just when you're in that setting and just the resources they have, it's just incredible. Like, the first game, watching all the physios, they're watching all of the footage on an iPad. If there's a big collision, they're literally going back, watching it, where the head was hit, what limit was. They're marking everything down. The performance analysis at training are up in the grandstand, videoing all the footage. The drones go from above so they can watch all the footage back. They clip it so that they can see just every little bit of that detail. And so to be in charge of the nutrition, and granted, what they were doing was very, very different to what I have now implemented from a change perspective. So there was a little bit of resistance, especially the first pre-match menu where they didn't have what they would usually have. They're very big on fattier foods over here, like bacon and eggs and whatnot before they're going to go and play. And I've slowly been able to integrate them to understand periodization around carbohydrate and knowing when to have it and when not to have it. So there's definitely a lot of resistance early across a lot of pretty much everyone. But equally, I sort of stood my ground a little bit and gave some rationale and actually put together a massive, almost like a nutrition 101 document, periodizing all their week, understanding the different substrates and why we get the benefits from them. And that got a lot of buy-in, which led to getting a lot of basically training starts from 2 till 9:30. So the girls train in that space. And so, in terms of what my roles are, I'll normally have to, when I get there, so changing all of the menu. So there's all these different foods. They weren't having protein before they do weights. They'd have like a chocolate protein ball, which had 4 grams of protein, but like 20 grams of fat. And they're like, I had a protein ball. And I'm like, oh God. So introducing like yogurt pots with frozen fruit, cereal. The chefs have been amazing, introducing like collagen jellies that they have before weights now. Different types of banana and fruit bread. So I have a really good relationship with the chef because they have a full-time chef that does all of the meals, redesigning the post-match meals and after training meals. So now that all that's done, it was like coming in and just taking on the whole program and then throwing out everything that was there and being like, nah, we're not going to do that. This is what we're going to do. But equally having to design it all from scratch, which was a lot of work, but equally it paid its way, forward 100 times, because now that I have all of that buy-in and everyone's on board with it and they understand it, it's a lot easier now that nutritional literacy is improved. And equally, a lot of our athletes are contracted by England, so we refer to them as internationals, and a few of the other internationals are from Canada and USA. So you're talking about some really high caliber athletes. And so what I found is once I had a couple of those internationals sit down, have consults, put together specific interventions for them, it kind of spread like wildfire, as well as a couple of the girls that were coming back from ACL. Someone did a calf, had to lose weight just by changing someone's diet within 4 weeks, pulling off 8 kilograms. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, she's moving so well. So a lot of those little wins have kind of compartmentalized, and also that paired synergistically is kind of giving me a little bit of clout now to be able to be like, okay, if Scott's saying this, so there's obviously a reason why we've got to do this. And their first 2 games, I think we've won like 50 something to like 10. So they've just wiped everyone. GPS numbers are up. So far, fingers crossed, everything is really good. But it's definitely been a very, very full on experience. So my day, typically, I'll have to leave Felixstowe at like 11. I get there for 2 if I don't get heaps of traffic. And then I'm there till 9:30. And then I was commuting back, but then I have to come back up to Middlesex on the Wednesday. So I've just been staying at Jenny's sister-in-law in London. And then same thing, the next morning I get up at 5. So I sleep for like 5 hours and then go to uni all day and then go back and do the same again on a Thursday. So I'm at StoneX which is such an incredible facility. It's like, picture Marvel Stadium, but they've got a ridiculous sports science lab, and that is where the Middlesex sports science department is. So my uni is at StoneX. So I'm there all day Tuesday, all day Wednesday, all day Thursday, and then they play on Saturdays.
That's cool. Okay, so the uni or the sports science lab of the uni is at the
At StoneX Stadium. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And that's where you go. You don't actually go to the other parts of the university. You go there.
Yeah, so the main campus is Hendon, which is like a suburb, and I was going there sometime. Like, it's where all they've got huge libraries and this massive quad area. It's amazing, but equally, anyone that's in the sports science field, if it's exercise science, nutrition science, you're out at StoneX, because that's where the biomechanics lab is. That's where the physiology lab is, and these facilities that they have are just like next level. Like, they've got DEXA scans, they've got anything and everything that you could, like all these new toys that I had. Like yesterday I was playing on learning how to use the dynamometers, which I'd seen before but never actually used. So yeah, it's really, really cool. And knowing that I'm going to have access to all of that for my thesis and for some of the research I'm going to do is very, very exciting.
Obviously the gym's cool too, right?
Well, they've got a couple of gyms, bro. So there's the gym that there's like a full setup. So it's matrix everything. There's another one that's techno gym. And then we have in our biomechanics lab where we've got, we do all the speed testing, and they've got sensors from above, force plates all through the floor, squat rack. So we're doing some stuff yesterday on counter movement jumps and mid thigh pulls. So they've got squat racks, but they've got force plates where you can actually measure what someone's, peak force output is during different phases of whatever lift you want to look at. So they have that. And then they have their main, I guess, compound based area where same thing, barbells, squat racks. Yeah, they've got a running track. They actually have on the other side of the facility, they've got a part of the running track that they used at the Olympics for the London. They cut it out and they bought it and they put that. So
that's cool.
That sometimes I'll do some of the sprint stuff, speed and agility if it's freezing cold, which it is, inside on the other side of the venue. But yeah, very, very cool.
So going back to controlling their nutrition, are you just controlling it when they're there training or at a game, or are you giving them some kind of plan to follow at home 7 days a week? What you do with a bodybuilding client, are they doing like check-ins, body weight, tracking data? Is it that kind of stuff?
So yeah, so what I'll do is if you want, I'll actually, because I had a feeling this question might come up, I'll just quickly share the screen just to give you an idea, the easiest way to simplify.
Yeah, should be able to share your screen.
You see that?
Yeah, so
for example, what I did with a lot of these girls, because some of them come from a bad, I guess, history in terms of bad relationship with food, and their nutritional literacy is not good. So rather than trying to get them to count macros and intakes and whatnot, I devised a color coordination system. So basically their week broken up. And so, for example, so if they're playing, so we refer to match day -1, match day +1. So for example, this is pertaining to carbohydrate intake. So on a -1, what should we be having? On a +1, and basically looking at dosing carbohydrate around specific times. So for example, when we have heavier training loads, and also when we're looking at trying to elicit some of the aerobic adaptations post, like say, for example, on a Wednesday, a lot of the girls will have a aerobic session. And so we feed low carbohydrate those meals afterwards so that we can enhance some of the mitochondrial biogenesis pathways. So again, there's a lot of research around low glycogen availability and upregulating some of those cell signaling proteins that help basically improve mitochondrial biogenesis. So improving the actual number or the size of the mitochondria, which is where we produce ATP. So things like that, they'd never done anything like that. So it's a really bespoke system, but equally we tailor it. So if they play on a Saturday, that's what their week looks like. If they play on a Sunday, obviously it looks a little bit different. And then obviously players that are in the rehab groups, I basically give them their own version of this based on, again, one of the things I changed was we have players that are either gainers, maintainers, or losers. So those that need to potentially lose a bit of body composition, maintain, or those that need to put on a bit of size. And so, for example, for those athletes that need a specific intervention, again, I would devise the color coordinating system so it's a bit more relevant. And then they have things like, what their recommendations are for protein and fats. And then for a lot of them as well. So they have a full library that I built of different meals for, okay, what would a normal breakfast look like if they're not, rather than giving them a written example, they can kind of see some of the foods of like what they would have. So that has made a big difference in terms of them actually understanding the nutrition. And then obviously my 3 Fs, which I stand by: fueling, performance, facilitating recovery, adaptation, and a food first approach. And this is actually something that I've had, virtually printed on the walls for them to understand that obviously the nature of the muscle going into a training session, in the middle of it or after it, is ultimately going to determine the adaptation. And so for a lot of them, that has had a lot of buy-in. And we just use this as sort of like our nutrition Bible. When I have a consult, when we're doing a food recall or something, I can just refer back to this. And equally, just manipulating the color coordination around what they need to be doing if it's something outside of this general team recommendation.
That's really cool, bro.
Yeah, so that was a really good way to bridge that gap. And then even their supplements program, a lot of them didn't have a lot of information. So now we have some specifics around what subs we take, how much we take, when we take it, the benefits from an ergogenic perspective. So a lot of work that has gone into it, but equally now that it's all set up, it's like when you onboard a new client, there's a lot of work at the start, but once you get that basis and that buy-in, it's a nice smooth transition. So it's been really cool, to be honest, to be able to work with a different array. In the space of like a week, I went from having 50 athletes I work with online to now almost 100, because we've got 45 on our list, and everything's done via WhatsApp. So it's like every morning when I wake up to do check-ins now, I look at that, but then equally I look at my WhatsApp and see who has messages or questions and who needs to book consults. So very full-on, awesome experience. But yeah, so I'm contracted there until end of June. And then obviously the plan is to come back. And the other benefit of that, which I'll touch on quickly, is just the club were really receptive to me being able to use the players for part of my research project for my thesis. I'm going to look at, which is something that I know we're all interested in, but just looking at some of the effects of increased carbohydrate availability during the menstrual cycle. So looking in particular at the follicular phase. So in the process of getting all of that ready to pump out once it goes through ethics and is approved. So that'll be very exciting. And hopefully, because there is such a gap in the literature in that space, I'm hoping to be able to try and bridge it, potentially get something, really decent and get it published.
That'd be awesome, man. MG, you want to say anything? Do you have anything to add to that?
Oh man, that's honestly very so cool. I was trying to look through the meal plan. I'm like, how many meals are these girls having cream of rice? It's like cream of rice breakfast, cream of rice lunch. No, that's so cool, man. I absolutely love what you do. I love the style. I love the implementation of the color system as well, man. Especially when you think about, for a lot of these players, this type of stuff they just haven't had exposure to before. It's really easy for me and MT to look at it and just be like blown away at how cool it is, because it's something that we really truly appreciate and value. But we also understand the importance of why food at certain times has a benefit. But for someone who's never been exposed to it, I just think the way that you've structured it and the way that you've made it look, for somebody who's coming from a background of not having nutritional literacy, is phenomenal, bro. And that's why I got my phone out and took a photo, because I was like, that is such a great idea, man. Such a great idea. And I just want to credit you, man, for like how you've walked into just such a foreign environment. And I know you know your shit, but you don't know the sport. It's a different sport. You're in a different country, and you just fucking taking charge like a boss, bro. And I'm just so inspired right now, man.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate that. Apologies that was a bit draining for some, because I know it's not bodybuilding related, but equally, I think for anyone that is into the periodization component to it, it's pretty cool. And it has been a really, really challenging thing, but equally that was part of this whole process, to take myself out of that comfort zone. And again, I think it just reinforces that you can never stop learning. Like, I look back at where I was when I left in terms of what I knew versus what I know now, and it's like you didn't really know anything. And that's where it's just, there's so much there. So it's definitely gonna have a really, really positive impact, long term, I think, in terms of just being able to level up both in a research space, but also just as a practitioner with everything that I do, whether it's just in physique sports. So obviously now having this position, it opens the opportunity to continue to work in that space if I decide I want to do that down the track.
Awesome, man. We talk about it all the time, about continuing to get uncomfortable. We talk about it, very specifically and often on this podcast related to gym, right? To training and to nutrition, but it's relevant to everything in life. And it just shows you, like, you can be as established in your career as, say, Scott Morrell is, having Powerhouse and all the things he's got going on, but then takes a leap of faith, gets uncomfortable, puts himself in a new environment, in a crazy situation, and he's already reaping the benefits, man. So never stop getting uncomfortable. That's the message of today's potty.
If you want to grow.
Yeah, man.
I've got some questions that luckily are going to translate very, very well to what you just spoke about. So we've got a question. What is the pros and cons of having training day nutrition versus rest day nutrition?
Yeah, so I guess context is important regarding what is your goal. Did this person give any influence around what their goal is in terms of, are they a bodybuilder? Is it like, do you know what I mean?
Well, we don't know if it's off-season or comp prep, but maybe you want to give an example for both. If you're in off-season or you're in comp prep, why would you want to have, say, high days on training days and low days on rest days?
Yeah, and then also, Scotty, just before you get into it, because this is not to say that high days are better all the time, or because we both use linear and non-linear systems too. So when Scott says context is important, it really, really is important, because all of us will utilize both of these systems at different times.
Mm-hmm.
I guess to summarize it, so although I feel like a lot of athletes, yes, there's a massive influence like around the performance that goes on in the gym, but equally, I think the nature of the training stimulus, yes, it is important in terms of how athletes respond to training, but the nutritional status of the muscle before, during, and after training can ultimately be the determining factor in terms of eliciting any kind of adaptation. So I think that needs to be factored in. So if you've got someone in let's say a few of my athletes this morning are in fat loss phases that I've done check-ins for, all of which are currently following a linear dieting approach where they're running 7 low days. They're equally coming off the back of, almost 38, 40 weeks of a controlled surplus. So they have sufficient fat mass to support and facilitate, a deficit of that magnitude. And equally, their rate of loss is very, very high because they have more fat mass per unit of fat mass that they can liberate per unit of time. So it makes sense to be able to do that. And equally, are able to do that very uninvasively. Hunger levels are not really there. They don't have any food focus. Versus if you were trying to get me 5 weeks ago to run 7 low days, I would be trying to eat the desk that I'm sitting at right now because all I am thinking about is food. So context, because someone who's got more body composition versus someone who doesn't. So I think as a coach, we're wanting to try and manage athletes' performance in the gym is important, but equally managing body composition so that you're not in a position that you're having to run tidy up phases every 3 months because you're getting too fat too quickly. So it's trying to bridge. We need enough food if we're in a gaining phase to support and facilitate good quality training and obviously adaptation and recovery. But equally, we don't need too much to the point where we're gaining way too quickly and we run out of runway and we have to run a tidy up phase too quickly. So it's about managing that. And then equally on the other side, if you're in a dieting phase, as we start to get leaner, we've spoken about obviously the cost of dieting and weighing up, giving back to the system. So it's a balancing act between knowing when to take and when to dig and when to give back, and equally using food and carbohydrate as a substrate to facilitate whatever it is from a training or from a body composition outcome that you're trying to go after. Because if you're someone that's in a dieting condition, if I give MG a refeed, I know that on that day he's having a refeed, hopefully he's at estimated maintenance, we're not going to see any fat loss on that day. So that is a downside. We're trying to get leaner, but we're not going to see any fat loss on that day. But as a result of giving him that refeed, perhaps he sleeps better, we top up muscle glycogen levels, the training session that he has the next day is really, really good, and it gives him a second or a third wind. In most cases, if we were refeeding, it would probably be, I like to give back to back so that we can actually see, A, if we do get a response from a muscle glycogen saturation perspective, and B, if there's any kind of increase in perceived energy availability and or an improved training performance. And that gives you data that's invaluable because moving forward, okay, cool, we know that a 2-day refeed does it. But for MT, he might need 3 or 4 days of topping up. And although you might lose 4 days of dieting, it might then give you 12 days where you can really go hard and he can get in the trenches and dig. So ultimately, as we just said, context. It's about knowing, what variables to manipulate. And essentially the art of coaching is knowing when to manipulate them.
So well said, man. I think for me, like the longer I do it, the longer I've done it, in the early days, you were super hesitant to give back to the system as often as I probably do now, because you're more concerned about, the trade-off that Scott said earlier, which was, I know on that time I'm not really dropping fat, and it's like, oh, but am I going to get lean enough? And I think it just comes with experience. The longer you do it, the better you are at planning it earlier to allow yourself the time to be able to do it. And all of a sudden you start realizing how much more efficient your overall preps become. And you don't see these things because you've already pre-planned for it. And you realize that, like Scott said, and I think, the sentence you said that really resonates and will resonate with a lot of people. It's like, I've given back for 2 days to maybe address 3 or 4 things, but the one thing that it's really given me is the ability to go hard for the next 12. I thought that was a really, really good comment, because in the reality, that's really what it's all about. It's like, I'm giving you that next, as we say, that next really big dig. I'm setting you up for it now.
Yeah. And sorry, go MT.
I was going to say, never underestimate the progress you can make when you are spending time giving back to the system.
For sure, yeah.
Because I think as well, one of the things that people have to understand, when you're truly shredded, it doesn't matter. When people, I would still always get those questions at the back end of prep. Oh, what are your refeeds? What are your intakes? A refeed at 3,400 calories might sound like a lot to most, but when I'm in prep, it doesn't make any difference in terms of how shitty you feel. Maybe after 2 or 3 days, you do have a little bit more energy, which allows me to train harder, but it doesn't just wash everything away and now I feel great again. So you can never really, I think as soon as you get to that point, accepting that this is now my new level of homeostasis, this is how I'm going to feel, this is how life is going to be. But equally, the biggest thing that you can take away from pushing food in, I believe, is improvement in the gym. So many athletes fall short at the back end and fall victim to taking their foot off the gas, which ultimately is our biggest driver for retention of contractile tissue, because you're not giving your body a reason to want to hang on to something that is metabolically active. You don't need to have heaps of muscle. You do need, you need some fat to be able to survive. So if your body has to pick between one or the other, we know which way it's going to go. So giving your body a reason to hold on to that mass, that is a very, very undervalued piece, I believe. And that's why I'm such a big advocate of going harder early, slowing things down, pushing more food in so that you can protect training performance and thus protect all of that hard-earned tissue that you've built in the improvement season.
Would you say that, say in someone's prep, the average calorie deficit for the whole prep is exactly the same between these two scenarios? One is linear dieting all the way through, or we run high-low days all the way through, but the deficit is the same for the whole prep. And the fat
so energy balance is accounted for.
Yep. The fat loss is the same through the whole prep. So they get the same level of leanness at the end, either approach. But would you say the muscle retention would be different between the two?
So this is my argument for that. And I think when Jackson Pios did that refeed study a few years back, looking at, was there any benefit from a lipolytic perspective in terms of being able to oxidize more free fatty acids by refeeding and then going back? Perhaps not. But then the caveat to that is, I would say, is what is the change in lean mass retention? Because there's no way, I'm yet to come across anyone that can just linear diet all the way through without running out of rope.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my opinion. I don't believe there's any possibility where you could do a 30-week prep and be sucked down in the hole the whole time, even though the magnitude of the deficit may be less on your low days versus someone who's following a non-linear dieting approach of 5 down, 2 up at certain stages. Again, context, I think it's better to, when you need to dig, and then start to give back. And sometimes it's not always like, we might have a plan where between weeks 10 and 20, we're going to refeed twice a week. But some weeks we may not be able to refeed because our rate of loss may have dropped. And then other weeks we may have to refeed 4 times or we'll diet break. So I think it's important to, and it comes back again to periodization rather than just a cookie cutter, stay in the hole. Because I know for me, even psychologically, if I would much rather dig a bit harder at the start when it's less invasive to do so and have the ability to top up a little bit more, sleep a bit better, train a lot harder, recover better, at the back end of prep versus just if I'm eating 2,200 calories all the way through and it's nice and low versus if I had the ability of having, 4 or 5 days at 1,900 and then I've got 2 at 2,800, I'd much rather do that because I know that when I have those refeed days, I'll just from a placebo perspective, I feel amazing. I'm eating more today. I'll tell myself that. And then equally, I know that the 2 days following that refeed are going to be pretty good as well, because muscle glycogen saturation is going to be a lot higher. So it kind of breaks up the week. So 4 out of my 7 days are going to be a lot better versus having 7 shitty days where it may not be like really, really low, but it's not really making any difference. And you would kind of just, I think, fall into that feeling of just feeling crappy all the time. So to answer your question, yes, I think a non-linear dieting approach would supersede that. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but I'm just going to keep asking you questions.
Yeah.
So would you say the most common approach, not saying everyone does this, but the most common approach is to do some kind of linear dieting at the first part of prep, and then there'll always be a component of non-linear dieting after that?
I think there's more awareness around that now. Something that we've been preaching for a long time since we've had the podcast. So I think people are listening to that. But I still think that there are quite a lot of athletes, even some of the athletes that I had consults with, that have onboarded after their seasons that they just had this year, speaking about really digging all the way to the line. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I've spoken about Ev in some of her earlier shows where we had to do that to get her ready super, super early. It wasn't optimal, but again, context, it's what was required versus say someone like Ethan or someone like myself who was ready pretty early and was able to, spend maybe 3 or 4 down, 3 or 4 up for the last few weeks of prep and then be able to hold territory. That's definitely going to be a lot better, because otherwise, if you're digging someone all the way to the end, you know that training performance is going to be garbage, which means the likelihood of you holding on to all of that tissue definitely declines. And equally, it's kind of hard to gauge where is the physique at, because when you've got someone that's super fatigued, you see a lot of edema, sleep is really, really crappy. So you're not really getting an honest representation of where is the look at when you clear out all that water. And that's one of the advantages of why we prescribe high days or refeeds at the back end too, is to wash off the fatigue. Okay, and see, now we're back at baseline. Where are we? Because you can have some days where, I remember when we arrived over here in the UK, the second day after flying, despite trying to do everything right, I just looked like a skinny 6'2" male that's never lifted weights before, had no detail, ran 3 refeed days back to back. And then it's like you can see all of the striations, your vascular, because all that fluid leaves, the fatigue leaves, and it's like, wow, this is where we're at now. So sometimes you've got to accept that you're going to look pretty crappy the flatter you get. But I think it's BK who says you've got to get flat to get lean, and you've obviously got to be lean to be able to fill out. I know I've heard him say that before, so I'm referencing him for that. But he's exactly right in that sense. So you are going to have to spend some time looking really, really shit in order to get the physique that you want to look at, but equally, titrating intakes to be able to then, all right, let's have a look. Let's come back up for air and see where we're at. And then it's like, we look good, but we still need to dig more. So back down we go. Or maybe not, we're right where we need to be. Sometimes taking too much more, you may get a little bit sharper, but then you've got to weigh up, what am I going to sacrifice from a size perspective?
You touched on a really good point there about washing off fatigue, and actually how having high days washes off fatigue and improves your look. I've had so many clients that, they might look watery. They say, oh, I'm not lean enough. And then we do high days and like, how come I'm already leaner now? What happened? I was like, because the body just washed off all that fatigue and all that fluid retention that you had. And that extra food helped get rid of all that. And it showed exactly what was underneath. So sometimes it's counterintuitive to increase food to actually make you look a little bit leaner, right? Or look sharper.
Yep. Yeah, and if you think about it from a physiological perspective, let's say that you are looking super fluid and then all of a sudden you push in an extra, I don't know, say it's some of the guys where you might push in 150 grams of carbohydrate and then all of a sudden you see a massive shift. You're looking at 2.7 to 3 mil per 1 gram of carbohydrate to store it and partition it. So all of that fluid that was perhaps sitting in that extracellular interstitial layer, that space, all of a sudden, it gets sucked straight into the muscle, helps to partition that carbohydrate. And all of a sudden, we look dry, so to speak, to some people refer to as, but it's just some of that edema leaving. And again, moving some of that fluid and sticking it inside the cell.
Yeah. So then I'm going to flip that question the other way around. What about if you're in the off season? Say you're doing 12 months of growth in a surplus. Surplus is the same, these two scenarios. One is linear calories or non-linear calorie approach. But the surplus for the whole year is exactly the same. Which person would gain more fat and more muscle mass?
I think, again, context, it depends on the individual. I think you can do either or. I think athletes that have to eat a bit more, and I'd put myself in that camp, I prefer to have 5 and 2, where the days that I'm training, I'll eat a bit more, and the days that I won't, again, we're talking it might be 4,000 calories versus eating 4,500 or 600, whatever it may be. And that's because I find it really challenging, as I've found a lot of athletes do when they're on their rest days, to push in really high, copious amounts of food. And MG, you can attest to this. You know, you've been in that position before. And so sometimes it's easier to have a day where it's a bit less. So, pardon me, at least that way towards the back end of the day, maybe you're not hungry, but you're like, oh, I'm not like stupidly full now. So when you wake up the next day and you've got to push in 1,000 calories for meal one, you can do so, and it's a little bit easier to be able to do that. But I think if you can, whatever nutrition intervention you employ, again, you go back to those pillars. You want to be able to facilitate and optimize high quality training. And obviously you need to make sure that you're getting enough food on the rest day, because the rest day is arguably the most important day in terms of making sure you're getting sufficient nutrients to recover and to help elicit that adaptation. But if you're having the exact same, it's a 7-day approach, that you might find that a lot challenging to get in, which could then potentially impede your ability to eat the next day and the days afterwards. So I think if you're someone that's not on an overly crazy amount, I'll usually run a 7-day split, but equally you'll always have open dialogue. If I had an athlete that feels a little bit better by eating a bit less, then perhaps that they can do that. I think it's always easier to be able to push in more food on days that you're training. So I think it needs to be specific to the individual, and also going, by how they feel. But equally, I think the more and the higher food comes up, I feel like there's probably more of a need to potentially periodize it, so that you're having not some low days. Maybe you've just got normal days, or maybe they are low days. You call it whatever you want, but maybe it's just that you're eating a little bit less carbohydrate, and equally perhaps, you're pushing in a bit more fat. So sometimes if I'm doing that, if we're running higher carb on days where we're training, it would make more sense to maybe have fats a bit lower, so that we're not delaying gastric emptying. We get the nutrients into the blood quicker. But equally, on a day where we're eating less carbohydrate, perhaps we can eat higher fat, or you could even have the same energy balance accounted for and just manipulate the macronutrients. So instead of having 600 grams of carbs and 55 grams of fat, maybe you're having 400 grams of carbs and 110 grams of fat. I would never go that high normally, but just as an example. So it just depends on the individual. And this is where I don't think there should ever be just a cookie cutter generic approach.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I think that, sometimes if you have your high days on your training days, we're talking about in an off season, in a surplus, sometimes people can take that too far, and being in even a more of a surplus doesn't mean you gain even more muscle. And, there's only a certain surplus you need, and the rest is just going to go to storage.
Yep.
So I think context is important, and making sure that, your high day calories aren't super high for no good reason, and they're just high enough. And then on your rest days, because, you're not overly hungry when you're not training on those days. You don't want to feel so full all the time, so you might bring food back down. But I wouldn't bring it down into a deficit. I wouldn't try to bring calories all the way back down. I'd probably try to find a maintenance or a slight surplus, because you still need a surplus to help with recovery on that day too. So I think no extremes is probably the answer I'm trying to give there. It's okay if you want to have a non-linear approach, but I wouldn't do any extremes on either days.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, MG?
Yeah, man. I mean, the only time I've really struggled, I think at the back end of my off season, when we pushed up as high as probably like 800 gram a day, the only days I really struggled was the days I wasn't training.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah. But for me, I agree with MT as well. Like, I don't see the need for having sort of higher days when the surplus is there anyway, other than the example that you gave, Scotty, where, you might have someone who's just really, really struggling to get it down, but like in their mind feels like, man, on leg day I can eat. It's like, all right, well, let's take 100 grams off your 2 rest days and add it to your leg day. If that helps you get through, awesome. But I don't think that it's really getting you any greater benefit, to answer MT's question.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. We'll leave it there. Scotty, you're starting your day and we're ending our day. We're going to sleep now.
What are we? We're 10 p.m. Is it? Yeah, 10 p.m. I actually have a 5 a.m. session tomorrow. So,
oh no, I appreciate you boys. Pushing this back.
So, but I think for we're going to record the next one Tuesday night, which is good because I get a bit of a sleep in Wednesday morning, so that'll suit me well. That's why Tuesdays will be good. But man, everyone's been wanting to hear your beautiful voice and see your beautiful face. We said a couple of weeks ago, you know, we brought the IQ down, and the podcast got a lot, you know, a lot.
I don't know about that.
What's the word for not as good looking? Anyway, that's what it got when you got off the screen, right? Because but we missed you, bro. I know that me and you just via our DMs have been, you know, exchanging I love yous more than ever because you haven't been here. So it's just nice to see your face and hear your voice. And like MT said, all of our catch ups lately, we've had so much to try and get through that it's just been nice to hear. I haven't even had the chance to hear you break everything down like you did today. So it was just nice. You probably just saw anyone who was watching on YouTube, me just sitting back and listening, because I've just had snippets of it, but it was just so nice to hear everything that you've been up to. And I've been so excited for you with this new role, as I explained before. And I just want to keep hearing about it, man. So, you know, all that exciting testing,
Thanks, bro.
all that great work you're doing, just keep filling us in, because it's freaking awesome stuff, man. And it's definitely an opportunity that, you know, feels a bit once in a lifetime. And I'm just so glad that, you know, the person who deserves it most has got it. And, you know,
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
In 3 years, you running the same thing for the Collingwood Football Club. So we'll start to put the feelers out there to get him back home. But if anyone can pass this on to the department at the Collingwood Football Club, we want Scotty Morrell down there.
Do you know what's funny? The physio for Storm, she's an Australian, Danny. She's actually the head physio at the Saracens as well. So it's where the two. There's another fellow Aussie there. So she came over from. She was working with the Wallabies, and then decided she wanted to come to the UK for a change. Cool, and then now she's over here as well. So we're the two Aussies trying to make it in a big bad England world. I hope everyone can see my backdrop. One of my things, I know that we do the different. You can't really see that, the different props each week, but I'm gonna try and find a different British background each week, just as something a little bit different.
So good.
I love it.
So good. Maybe MT, you and I next week can try and have a British thumbnail. Like,
yeah, I'll try to find something.
Yeah,
just get a soggy biscuit or something and just like hanging on the screen or something like that.
That's a good idea.
I'll tell you what, just before you go, we got a lovely young girl who's just joined our gym, who's down on holidays, going back to the UK, who's you know, around Manchester, and we were just looking at the weather app today, and it was like a low of 2 and a high of 4. And I thought of you straight away, bro. Like, poor Scotty, he must be fucking freezing.
So when we go out, so I spend most of my nights, I'll stay indoors as long as I can, because outside on the pitch, it was like 8 to 10 degrees when we first got there, but now it was -2 the other night. So we go out, we have these massive trench coats they give us. We refer to them. Have you heard of a snooty?
Yeah,
right up to your chin.
So
right?
I had no idea what it was. So it sits till there. Yeah. And then even I've never been one to wear a beanie, but I don't go. I don't know if you can see that. I don't go out without my without my beanie on, because it's just so cold, and you can't even drive your car. I was talking to Jen's dad this morning. I got to get this special spray that I have to put on the windscreen that stops it from completely freezing over overnight, and that helps to dilute the next morning. You can't drive ideally before like 8 because there's like ice that's that thick over everything. It's 2 degrees outside at the moment.
Stuff that.
That's right.
Man, do you know how much I'm looking forward to Bali? I literally am just like counting down. I'm just going to sat there. I'm never ever going to complain that I'm too hot or anything. I don't want to train in any gym that has air conditioning. I'm going to ask Ray Fitness to turn it off. I'm just going to sit and just bake in the sun. Feel like I haven't had sunlight in forever. It's crazy. And it gets so dark at like 4 p.m.
I feel bad for whinging to me before that. Oh, we've only got 19 tomorrow. I was like, oh, come on.
Scott, bro, that's like a heat wave over here.
Jesus. It was good catching up, Scotty. Obviously, we're going to have you back now, so it'd be good to have another really good potty next week, and we'll have some more questions for you. We only got through a couple, but I wanted to dig deep into that one too. So I think it was really good coming off the back of what you explained that you're working on anyways. So we'll have some more questions for you next week.
Awesome. Can't wait, guys. Looking forward to it. Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Looking forward. Hopefully it doesn't hurt the view count and we still get a few downloads this week.
All right, mate. You take care.
Cool. All right, boys. Take care. Hope you're feeling better, MT.
Thanks, boys.